got Alex in Sterling, Virginia. Thanks for waiting. As he fumbles for the microphone.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi. First, let me say that those last two callers were painful to listen to.
You should be sitting where we're sitting.
Okay, so I've been listening to you guys for quite some time, and I've been kind of back and forth in my faith, I would say, and I'm kind of at this point now where I'm not entirely sure how I feel. I'm at a point where I don't necessarily believe that the things in the Bible are accurate because they've been so thoroughly debunked, and all the things in there that are horrible. Let's just say it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I still have this
belief,
this feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
When I think about, God and Jesus, I feel like I'm talking to another person.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just me? Am I crazy?
No, you're trained.
And
I mean, you were trained to view it that way. I mean, just think about, if you trained a child to believe that there was a monster in the closet all the time, and I could come and make all the best arguments in the world, but if you were convinced, by the time I reach you, if you're an adult and you're convinced that there really are monsters in the closet and other people around you have socially reinforced that, even if I could sit there and tell you really good reasons why this can't be true, you're probably still going to fear the monster in the closet for a while. It doesn't just, sometimes that feeling doesn't just go away. There are people that I know who are atheists who are very, very confident in their atheism as far as they fall onto the strong atheist spectrum where they say, I can say that I believe there is no God. And yet they have a fear of hell, right? They'll write and say, why do I still have this fear of hell? And it's like, well, because someone taught you to be afraid of hell. I mean, that's what indoctrination is, right? I mean, if it didn't work, nobody would do it. Indoctrination is done to people because it works in a lot of people. And I had that same thing. That was, I think, probably the hardest thing for me to finally acknowledge was just coming from myself. And I think that might be a good starting point, right, is to understand that feelings, I don't know if you know the difference between interpersonal and interpersonal communications, but interpersonal communication is the communication that takes place within your own head, okay? And in human beings, there is a constant conversation happening in their brains, right? So you have always, you're getting emotional feedback about your surroundings, and information is coming in, and your brain is constantly processing that information and giving you information about what's happening around you. You get so used to it, right, because you grow up with it, and so you don't hardly hear what your brain is telling you, but your brain is constantly communicating with you. And one of the things it communicates are your emotions. So emotions, we know, are generated from the brain, okay? If you didn't have a brain, you wouldn't have emotions. And there are parts of your brain that can be damaged that impact your ability to feel emotion. So you can actually be emotionally impaired by damage to the brain. So we know that it's a brain that creates feelings, correct?
Well, yeah,
Okay.
I'm a biology buff. I accepted evolution
Right.
going through school.
So this feeling that you have, is simply your own brain, right? It doesn't indicate something really happening. It's simply your perception of something. And so I give an example sometimes where
So you're saying I'm talking to myself and
yes.
I'm convincing myself it's God.
Yeah, and because that's how you've been taught to interpret those messages.
There's another kind of tweak to it. So first of all, in my path out of Christianity, the Bible went away, but I was still looking for reasons to believe until I realized essentially that you can't really have any reason. If you chuck the whole Bible out, Christianity goes away, as does Judaism and other Abrahamic religions that have that foundation. If you're not convinced of, for example, the creation story and the fall from grace and all these other things. But there was a period of time where it didn't quite click that you could not continue to have these beliefs. Honestly, you could still say, okay, these people tried to explain reality and they got it wrong in the book, but they're still pointing to something true, and I'm going to keep believing that true thing or keep trying to find that true thing. But when you say that when you talk to Jesus, it feels like you're talking to another person, and I don't mean this to be rude at all, I'm going to question whether or not that's actually true, because I've talked to other people, and it's nothing at all like talking to God. Do you hear back
No.
Okay, so
No.
I mean, there are people who might say, well, I prayed and I talked to God and I heard an audible voice. There are other people who got like a fuzzy impression. And I think as soon as you depart from audible voice, you're already leaps and bounds beyond what it's like to talk to another person. Because even talking to another person, there's more than just an audible voice involved. But if you feel like you're talking to a person, that's different from talking with a person. And this idea of a personal relationship with God, it's, I think, one of several strong death knells for Christianity. Because I could be wrong about ultimate morality and ultimate truth. But there's one thing that I can't be wrong about, and that is knowing what it's like for me to be in a relationship with someone. I know what that feels like. And it would be dishonest for me to say that I was in a relationship with some supernatural being, because now I'm using the word relationship in an entirely different manner.
Yeah, but what I think Alex is describing, though, is you are in communication with yourself. And I think what the church does in many cases is train people to view that conversation as with something else, instead of recognizing it as your own head. And so you actually are looking at the subconscious communication that's coming up into the conscious level, and you're saying those impressions are coming to me from somewhere.
Yeah.
And since I don't recognize them as thoughts that I generated because I became consciously aware of it, so it had to come from somewhere else, right? But there's a non-conscious level to your brain, and it never stops working. And sometimes it makes you consciously aware of what's going on back there. So it creates these ideas, and it creates these impulses, and it creates these feelings, and then it bubbles them up to where you are consciously aware of them. And it very much can feel like, where did this come from, right? It's like I've had dreams before that something will happen in the dream, and it surprises me. And you kind of think to yourself, how can it surprise me if I'm the one making up the story? Right? I'm writing the story of the dream, and yet something happened that I didn't expect. How is that even possible? Well, it's possible because you're not aware of everything your brain is doing all the time, but you can treat it like somebody else. Does that make sense, Alex?
So what you're saying is, if you disregard the Bible, you ultimately have no basis for belief.
No.
There's no.
It's entirely. I'm not saying it's impossible that you could. So chuck the Bible out, and even with the Bible gone, maybe I've had a proper personal revelation, or I have some other source that serves as a foundation for my belief. What I'm saying is that when I got rid of the Bible, it became clear to me that I had no other justification. Not that no other justification was possible.
And I had a different experience, right? So I got rid of my Christianity, and then I continued to believe a God existed for like 10 years afterwards, because I had the same feeling you did. And so I kept searching for this God and searching for these answers, because I couldn't shake the feeling that God was there. I just felt it, right? But now I know that feelings don't actually represent what happens in the observable world, right? You can sometimes have a feeling about a situation, and then you find out that the situation is different than what you thought it was, and the feelings were incorrect, right? I use an example sometimes when I talk to people about going down an alleyway and you see a shadow and you get afraid thinking that there might be someone lurking in the shadows, and then you find out it's just a garbage bag blowing in the wind, or a cat or something doing something, and it's not like a person there waiting to mug you. So you can have fear which is indicative of recognizing that there's a threat to you, even in a situation where there's no real threat, because you just misinterpret the situation, and therefore you get wrong emotional feedback that doesn't really accurately represent what's happening. And so feelings can be wrong, right? They can misalign with what's actually going on in the world around you. And I'm saying that what's happening here, when you're saying that you've got all these doubts and you're not sure you believe the Bible anymore, but you still have this feeling that there's a God, what I'm saying is try to learn about feelings and where they come from and how they arise and how they can sometimes be inaccurate as far as aligning with what's actually happening around you. And you'll start to understand that a strong feeling doesn't really mean much. Does that help?
Well, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of like emotions come from the brain, that if you alter the brain, you can alter the person.
Right. But if you're working at this point on a feeling, right, that there's a God, that there's somebody or something there, then what you're really saying is that I just keep telling myself there's something and someone there. That's kind of what's keeping you believing, is your own mind just simply repeating this pattern.
You're right.
It took me 10 years to figure that out. I hope it sinks in with you sooner than that, because that was a lot of time wasted for me in looking for answers to things that were useless. Only useful in the sense that they ultimately led to me understanding what I just explained to you. But if you can really internalize that quicker rather than later, you'll save yourself a lot of energy in researching things that may ultimately, I can't say that you will have the same conclusion I did, but if you come to the same conclusion I did, the less time spent getting there, the better.
Right. Okay.
Great. Thanks for the call, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.